Welcome back to Live With, brought to you by Quest Nutrition. Visit questnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo, and today's episode of Live With is a special one because he is not an unknown. He is a very well-known person to the RXMuscle community. He's my co-host on the Heavy Muscle TV show, Heavy Muscle radio show, Live With, Iron Debate, everything we do pretty much over here at RXMuscle. He's there. He's my right-hand man. The guy I'm talking about, of course, is the technician, Chris Aceto.
Hey, Dave. I feel honored to be on your show for the millionth time. And follow Triple H, actually. I thought I was following Levrone, who never showed.
That's right. He didn't.
And I don't know if I can make it through the show. My eyesight is going so bad. I put these glasses on, but I think I look like Ted Danson.
You do.
With the glasses.
You do.
People used to think people always, when I was in LA, they used to say I looked like the bartender from that TV show.
Woody Harrelson? Yeah.
Yeah, in the olden days. Thank God I kept my hair and he didn't.
Yeah, and Ted Danson doesn't really have real hair either, so you got better hair than everyone.
He doesn't.
Now, I try to figure out how to start off the show, and I gotta start off the show with a blockbuster because everyone knows so much about you already that, this is the month of Ramadan, and as we know, a lot of bodybuilders out there, Ramy, Big Ramy, and a lot of the Muslim bodybuilders are all fasting during the day, and then they're trying to get their meals in at night. And a lot of people don't realize that you are a Muslim too, and that you are, I guess you could say, acknowledging Ramadan. It's not really that big a deal for you because you really don't eat very much anyway. But how you holding up?
I'm holding up. It's easy for me, and it's something that I actually enjoy, and I don't, think of it as a restriction or a punishment. So it's perspective on the way you look at it. I guess if you're, if you're not Muslim and you're thinking that you can't eat a drink for, actually, the longest days of the year are coming up. June. So it's a brutally long day compared to Ramadan moves on a lunar calendar. So if you're in like December and you're living in Maine, it's like you could prep easily for the Olympia in Maine in November. But if it's like June, then it's a different story.
I think a lot of people would love to know, how an Italian boy from Maine wound up as a Muslim. I mean, how did you find that religion? What year was it? And then what made you say, hey, this is something that I can relate to and that I want to get involved with?
Well, oddly enough, it's interesting to me that, people talk about like Dubai now and Qatar and these places, and people know of them and know where they are. But I went with Samir Banout, so I guess I have to blame it on Samir. I went with Samir Banout to the Middle East, to Qatar in 1991. I remember a lot of dates by who was preparing for what show. Mike Francois was preparing for the USA. and I went to Qatar. And what's funny about it, why I'm laughing is I actually had, as an aside, I was in Qatar and I had Mike FedEx me photos to Qatar. They were like $120 to FedEx them in the day.
Yeah, there was no digital photos, no internet. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no internet. Nobody had cell phones in 1991.
Right.
So me and Samir went to Qatar, and there was no internet. So I remember I went over to my father's house. And I said, you got a world book or something with a map on it? And I tried to look up where Qatar was. And because I didn't know where I was going, I was just going with Samir to do some bodybuilding promotions. So I tell Samir, this is me, and it's still me to this day, is I asked Samir, who's bringing us? He said, don't worry about it. Where are the tickets? You get them at the airport. What's a contact number for people? No worries, I'm going to meet you in New York. So I get to New York. I fly to New York from Maine, and I'm on the plane, and I'm waiting, and I get that feeling, Samir's not coming. Samir's not coming. So I don't hear, no one has a cell phone in those days, right?
Right.
So I get on the plane, I fly to like England to Qatar, and in those days, Qatar and Dubai were places of desolation. I mean, I can remember to this day flying into Qatar and seeing a couple like lights as we landed because there were no buildings really.
Wow.
Actually, the hotel I stayed at that trip, Ed Connors was the architect for. It was the I forget the name of the hotel, but it was like a 12-story pyramid-like, and that the skyline, which you know what the Qatar skyline looks like today, it looks like Hong Kong's.
Yeah.
It was one building. So I went to Qatar, and I remember getting off the plane, and it was like, the previous culture shock that I can remember was 16 years old flying to New York City from Maine.
Right.
And, like, wow, what, this is crazy. This is really big culture shock going to New York from Maine. Maybe I was 15. And when I get off the plane, I just saw like tons of people dressed in traditional Arabic dress, which I was completely unaware of. You know what I mean? At the time. And I was very unaware of a lot of things, Arabic culture, Islamic culture. So I got there and Samir was like going to be missing for like 5 days. So the only thing I could do was, pedal around some little stores and shops and have my hosts entertain me. And as it was, the host of who hosted me and Samir came from a very strong religious family, a very well-known religious family in Qatar to this day. And I started poking around and asking questions. It'd be like being in your office. What's this do? What do you do that? What do you? And that was my initial introduction to Islam, and it just made sense to me. It just made a lot of sense to me, and it's something that I didn't have to struggle intellectually to understand. And that was really the footprint for 1991.
Now,
for that, and actually, Dave. Now that I get you on the phone, this is not a text from Jim Mannion. I'm not stopping the interview to text Jim Mannion. I'm texting you as I sent you that pic. Did I send you that picture of Muhammad Ali just died, right?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, Muhammad Ali is someone that you always talk about. I know you're a big fan. You got a picture on the wall in your office back there of Muhammad Ali. I thought maybe he had an influence because he had obviously converted as well.
No, but I sent you the picture from the den of the family. It's the same people who introduced me to Islam was one of the first, was the same family to introduce Muhammad Ali. And I'm sending you the picture of the den where Muhammad Ali is sitting, when you can see how incredibly young he is, of the family that brought me and Samir way back in 91.
Well, what were you doing there with Samir in 91?
Well, we were trying to promote bodybuilding, and that's what we were doing. We were promoting bodybuilding, and it was, the irony is everywhere I went to these little gyms, there'd be like, Ahmed so-and-so or Mustafa so-and-so, little 18-year-old kid, and they were like little Ramys. There were just a lot of people with unbelievable genetics, and they'd say like, how do you get big, and and I said, God, you guys have, there's just a lot of people who I met on that trip who I thought were really good bodybuilders, and if they had any type of instruction or basic understanding of how to build muscle, they could be great bodybuilders.
How old were you at the time when you went there?
Early 20s,
yeah.
Mid 25, 24, 25.
Yeah, there's that picture, Johnny. I just got Johnny put the picture up there, so it's pretty amazing. And you were hanging out in the same couch over there?
It's the same family. That's the same family essentially who brought me and Samir over is in that photo. Gotcha. The same family that hosted Ali when Ali was there.
I'm assuming they probably.
And that was, I think Ali. That's probably early 60s, really early 60s. Right. That's pre dodging the draft, Ali. Right. Pre everything. Right. Nation of Islam, all that stuff.
Gotcha. Well, pretty interesting story there. Now, let me ask you this question. Let's take a step back in your career, because a lot of people don't realize, who Chris the bodybuilder was. Just like sometimes they don't know who Dave Palumbo the bodybuilder is. But obviously you were bit by the bug at some point in time. What was your introduction to bodybuilding early on? And can you remember the first time you said, hey, I want to be a bodybuilder?
Yeah, it's the same way a lot of people my age were introduced to it. Someone, took me. essentially took me to a bodybuilding contest. That's what got me excited about it. My uncle lifted weights and had some like weightlifting records in the state of Maine, and I used to like work out in his gym. I mean, in his garage, and someone took me to a bodybuilding show, which I loved. And then, gosh, after that, Dave, someone gave me like a bucket of magazines, and it was like the internet in print. So when kids like hang out on the internet 24/7 looking at bodybuilding pictures and all that, a guy gave me a crate of bodybuilding magazines. And I just devoured them in terms of like looking at pictures, looking at, training programs, diets, and all that stuff. So I was, I got originally, into like working out because I wanted to change my body to some degree. I wanted to get leaner, and I was running and running and running. And then I did meet like a local bodybuilder. That was a big step. And I was like, wow, what are you doing? He said, I'm bodybuilding. So I said, where? And he told me the gym, and he actually invited me to come work out with him. So he said, why don't you meet me at 5:30 tomorrow, and you can work out with me? It'd be like Arnold saying to some kid, hey, yeah, I'm bodybuilding. I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger. Come work out with me tomorrow at 5:30. So I show up at 5:30. I wait from no show. Next day, wait from 5:30. Nothing. Next day, 5:30. Like 4 or 5 days straight. And then so I finally, I was, scared to call him. You'd give me his number. And I said, I'm there every day at 5:30. He said, I'm there. I said, no, you're not. I know me. I'm thorough. I said, I ask for you. I look around for you. I'm there waiting, excited. He said, you know what? I'm there. I don't know what your problem is. I'm up at 4 o'clock to get there at 5:30. I'm like, 5:30 a.m.? So I said, okay, 5:30 a.m. So this is like wintertime in Maine. So I said to my parents, hey, can you take me to the gym? They're like, get lost. So I said, that's okay. I'll walk to the gym. And it was like a 4-mile walk from my house. So to get there at 5:30, you know what I mean? I'd have to walk, 15-minute miles. It'd take me like an hour sometimes in the winter, I'd have to walk there. So I'd walk to the gym, and the guy would give me a ride back to like the top of my block, or I'd have to take the bus back. And then I'd go to school for the day.
Wow. That was dedication. And how long did you do that for?
I did that until I got my driver's license, and then my father would let me take his car.
Oh, that was nice.
So I'd take the car to the gym.
That was nice. What was your first show? What year was that in? How soon after?
Oh, God, it had to be like 83.
Wow.
I think 82, 83. I did like a teenage high school, like New England championships, or like East Coast. You had to be a high school student.
Right.
And so I went with my sister. We didn't have like, Nolotol and Synthol in those days. And so I had to actually black trunks that looked like the ones that Arash and Sadiq wear.
Right. Classic Physique trunks.
So I did the contest, and I think I got like 6th. Right. And then I didn't know what I was doing, like everyone else. So, I mean, none of us did. Probably the guys 1 through 5 didn't either. So from there, I just started picking people's brains and just, copying. That's what you do, right? You look at people who look like they know what they're doing, which is sometimes dangerous, right?
Right.
And you just copy. So I went into like copy mode and would copy everything that I saw people doing. And the good thing though was what you were copying then was different than what you're copying now. What you were copying then was like people doing front squats, back squats, deadlifts, T-bar rows, bent over rows, bench press, incline bench press, pullovers, dips, chins. Nobody chins. Yeah. Chin-ups behind the neck. I don't think people would even consider them in any way, shape, or form, even fathom them to be an exercise. So, I was copying the right things, the basic exercises, because we didn't have, all the fancy machines and the fancy angle machines and, machines that almost do things for you.
Right. Charles Glass was 3,000 miles away from you, right? So I said Charles Glass was 3,000 miles away, so no angles, that's for sure. Now, how did you meet Bob Gruskin? Because a lot of people who don't know, Bob Gruskin is one of the original gurus. I guess you put him up there with the Dan Duchene era. And a he helped a lot of people on the East Coast. A lot of guys, really make a mark for themselves in the NPC and in the NABA division. Obviously, he was from the Bronx. Where did Bob meet you, and how did that whole relationship start with you and him?
I went to. So I go that was '83. I do this teen contest, and then '84 I go to this Region 1 bodybuilding show, which was an AAU show because there was no. I think the NPC was 1 year old at that point. So I go to this AAU show. It's called the Region 1. It's in Mount Holyoke, Massachusetts, which has a scene of in Pump and Iron where Arnold. I think Leon Brown is on stage, right? And that's the same venue, and he didn't have Arnold's phone number on that day, though.
No.
Thank you. I guess he couldn't with no cell phone. So I go to the Region 1s, and there's a lot of teenagers in the show, including some of the kids that had just beat me the year before because I recognized them. And you go and I'm skinny, and I'm looking around. I'm I'm gonna get killed here. And I go to the pump up room, and the show hasn't even started, and I hear this little voice go, "Wow, you look pretty good." And I look and I see this guy pointing the camera at me. I know what I said to this day. I said, I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "What do you mean, who am I?" I said, because no one's ever given me a compliment. No one's pointed a camera at me, right? You think you might be somebody then, right? If you're taking pictures of me pumping up. And he said, "You're going to win the show." And I'm like, this guy's completely out of his mind. He, who's this guy shooting, bodybuilders backstage? So he said, "I'm Bob Gruskin." I remember the second thing I said, Dave, I said, "You're Bob Gruskin?"
Oh, you knew who he was?
I didn't know what he looked like, right?
Yeah.
So, and he's like, he's like 5'2", he's got big glasses, and, his pants don't quite stay up, and he's got tennis shoes on and slacks and cigarettes in his top left pocket. So I was like, wow, I just, I can't believe I met you, and blah, blah, blah. You're Bob Gruskin, everyone knows you, and this and that. And we would just, we I don't hit it off with a lot of people. I don't. I'm either very reserved, or I can be not shy, but just not interested in the wrong environment. Right. And we hit it off, and he invited me to a show 2 weeks later, to come down and watch. I think Doug Wentz was in the show. He said, "Come to Worcester, Mass to see the teenage Mr. America." Ask Doug. Doug Wentz looked insane. He was 19 years old.
Right.
He got second, and he lost, I'll never forget, to Ted Lopes, who Ted Lopes to this day, if Ted Lopes showed up at 19 years old at the way he looked at that show, and it's not just because your perspective is different, I was a 15 or 16-year-old kid, and you don't know what big looks like. If he showed up on the internet right now, people would coronate him as the next, Rhoden.
Right. Yeah, he was great.
So that's how that relationship started, and I've always considered Bob Gruskin as a tremendous teacher, a great person, excellent human being. I mean, I wouldn't even go. I think excellent human being covers it. Generous, passionate, has empathy for people. A lot of things I learned or I saw in him, the way he treated people and worked hard to help people, achieve their dreams. I'm sure I have, sunk into me more than I even know today.
Sure. And you learned a lot of your techniques and dieting.
I stole everything from him. I always told him, said, "Bob, people say, oh, you learned a lot from Bob." I said, "No, I didn't learn anything from Bob. I stole everything from him." I mean, all the core wacky foundation that I have, it's all from him, right up until the wacky folders I keep on people. You know what I mean? It's the same handwriting. It's the same. This is John Ward's USA folder. Hi, John. And it's the same crazy, method that I copied. It goes back to copying. I copied it from him. You can do a lot by copying people.
Yeah. Well, it obviously worked. Now, let's get back to your career for a minute, because obviously you competed. You won a bunch of shows. You went to the national level. I remember we competed against each other a couple of times, I think. At what point, what was the furthest you kind of went at that national NPC level?
Well,
places
I only won. I only got second at the best. I got like second at the collegiate nationals, and then like kind of like at the end, like I competed with you at the USA in '96, which was a bad experience for me because I thought I looked absolutely tremendous coming into the show, and I had 4 impacted wisdom teeth for like a month running into the show, and the doctor said, you know, you're supposed to get them out, get them out, get them out. You know how stupid people. No, I won't get them out. You know, I'll just and they just I can't even remember the last 4 weeks. And the irony is, I looked really, really, really impressive 4 weeks out, and I called Bob like a month out, and I said, I just need your help. I said, I know it. He said, you know, what's going on? And I lost. You know, in a bodybuilding prep where you lose either someone where you help and you just lose, like you throw up your hands and say, I don't know where their body is right now. The last month, I didn't know where my body was, and it just it was a shitty experience. And anyways, at that point, I never had any aspirations of being like a professional bodybuilder. I just had aspirations of being the best, and that I could be. And I put a lot into that show, physically, you know, and mentally, and came away physically unfulfilled and mentally unfulfilled. And I just didn't want to go through that process again. And since I didn't think of bodybuilding as a career, you have to have a career. I mean, you have to do something. You know, you can't, you know, fill the cooler up and go to the beach and sit on the beach all day and do 2 workouts a day. You have to think about your future. And running into that show, after that show, I was, you know, I was really contemplating, where am I going to be in 10 years and 20 years time? And I knew bodybuilding may be in my life some way, but I thought it was, as a competitive bodybuilder, it was a waste of time.
Well, you know, we've all kind of had to, you know, at some point come to grips with where we're going with the bodybuilding. When you look now at this classic physique division, do you just say to yourself, man, I was just before my time, this would have been perfect for me?
Yeah, because I was, absolutely, because I only had a good structure and deep lines, with no weak body parts, but no overpowering body parts. So, and it was hard for me to get bigger. Meaning, I mean, for what I did weight wise, you know, it was just hard for me to add a lot of muscle to my body, and it was not going to come. And I'm a realist. It's I don't think it was going to come if you gassed the dark side either. So, you know, my physique was, you know, a thin physique with deep lines, so it would probably be more set for something like classic bodybuilding.
Yeah. Now, obviously, coming from Maine, it's very kind of like a sheltered type of environment. It's, you know, country. At some point, you made a decision you're going to move out to California, to Venice Gold's Gym, to the big time, so to speak. That's where all the bodybuilders were. How old were you when you did that, and what prompted that decision?
Well, I didn't live in a cave in Maine, Dave. But see, that was like the way the LA thing came for me was like, you know, total accident, unless you think, I mean, it's an accident unless you don't believe in accidents, which of course I don't. You know, it was, you know, part of, you know, my, you know, quote, destiny, in that, you know, it was one of these things. I answered an ad for David Zelon's bodybuilding camp. David Zelon was a business guy who eventually would go on to promote the Miss Olympia, and he would go on to also become a Hollywood producer, very successful one. And he promoted the USA when Flex Wheeler won, and he was the first guy to have like a trade show. So any trade show you see was from his creation. He was the first guy to try it out, to come up with this cockamamie idea of, I'm going to have a trade show next to the bodybuilding show. So he was a visionary, great guy. And he was looking for people, bodybuilders, to run his bodybuilding camp that he was going to have in LA. So I sent like a resume out to him when I was in college. And I was shocked that he called me back one day, And I picked up the phone. He said, "This is David Zelon. I got your resume. I'm really impressed with it. It's really not adequate. We want people who have really strong educations. You're just like in college. But I'm going to take a risk on you, and I'm going to bring you out to California. You're going to live out here for the summer. You're going to train with Lee Haney, Rich Gaspari. He sells you the book, the whole deal.
Right. Make you a
because
star.
After that, you're going to work for hardly anything,
Sure.
pay-wise. So he sells you on the dream, and which was fine with me, right? I was like 19, so I fly out to California that summer. I think it was summer of 88, 87. And I lived at Loyola Marymount University, and I helped to run the bodybuilding camp. And at that camp, Mike Quinn was a star, came in and did his thing, and Gaspari and Haney and Corey and, the whole crew, whoever was the who's who in that era was there. Samir, that's when I first got to meet Samir. And so I worked at the camp those summers, and the final summer I was there, I had already set up a job to work for this real estate guy in Hawaii, because I did an internship when I was in college in Hawaii for 6 months. And I met somebody who was a real estate mogul out there. I met him in the gym, and he was much older, and he was extremely well known in Honolulu. And his office invited me to come out and, do something out there, real estate wise. And I never made it out there because the last summer I was there, I got stuck with the bodybuilding stuff. And then I ran into Ed Connors, and that was that.
Talk about Ed Connors. How did Ed Connors change your life in a sense?
Ed and Bob were good friends, and I'd always heard about Ed in a good way from Bob. And so one day I was in the parking lot of Gold's, and someone said, "Are you Chris Aceto?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm Ed Connors." And it's the same thing, no internet, you don't know what these people look like. And I do like "Oh, you're Bob Gruskin, you're Ed Connors."
Yeah.
And he said, "I hear you're doing some diets for some people in the gym." And I said, yeah, I'm helping out some people, getting ready for shows. And he said, "I have, I'm paraphrasing, I have a deal for you. You can have free office space in the gym next to my office. You can use my secretary. You can make long distance phone calls. You can have a parking space. You know how hard it is to get a parking space at Gold's, right?
Yeah.
You can have yours reserved for Chris Aceto right here. But what I need from you is, when I need you, you need to be able to, help me." And the help was like, he would bring out people out to California who wanted diet advice or prep for shows and that type of stuff. So he'd want me to prep them, not for free, but in exchange for the office space. So I get the office space, Dave, and I start doing diets, and it's odd. I start making money right away. And I put a little small sign in Gold's, and I start making more money. And it was like, wow, Gold's had 10,000 members at that time, right?
Wow, yeah.
And it was packed morning, noon, and night. So you have access to 10,000 customers, and you're the only one doing diets.
How long were you there? I mean, how many hours a day were you in your office?
Oh, dude, forget about it. You know me, how hard I work. I'd train at 5. I'd be in the office at 6:15. First client would walk through my door at 6:30. I'd stay to 9 at night.
Wow. Oh, my God.
6 days a week.
You must have cleaned up there, huh?
I was cleaning up. So then, Dave, I'll tell you what sales. I learned something about sales. So people would come in, right? I'd have clients. Did I lose you?
No, we got you.
Okay. So people would come in, and I have clients, and they would come in, and I'd meet with people, and it's LA, so everyone comes from every walk of life, every walk of life. It's musicians, it's actors, it's lawyers, it's doctors, and everyone has money. It's ridiculous. Money is no object to nobody there. I don't know that yet because it's an object to me, right? I'm still struggling.
Sure.
So this lady comes in, I help her get in shape, and she says, Chris, we're going to charge, I'm going to go to work for you, and we're going to charge a fortune for your advice. And we did. And she just needed to get her I think she was getting like a 35% commission, because she said, I need 35% of what I'm going to sell you for. And it's like one of these, I'm thinking 35%, but I'm like, well, if she can get that type of money, then fine.
Like, what were you charging?
I listen, I started out charging like 29 for a consult, then 49, then 89, then 99, then 129. She brought it up to like 499, dude.
Oh my God! Wow.
So she'd get like 35% of the 499, but I was starting at 29. So why would I complain?
Sure.
So she would bring me clients like insane, to the point where she had to start working as like my secretary. Seriously, to be able to say, Johnny Styles is here. Okay, next, knock him out. Wow. Dave Palumbo's here. Knock him out. Who's next?
Wow.
And that's all due to, and I've always thanked Ed Connors. Ed, Ed was, if it wasn't for Ed, I'd never be in that. I'd never been able to survive in LA.
Now, was it weird because, you're 19, 20 years old and you're doing all these consultations and you're kind of like becoming the diet guru there at Gold's Gym Venice. How did the top bodybuilders respond to you? Like, how would the Barbarian Brothers respond to you? Did they accept you, or did they think you were like some kind of weirdo?
No, the odd thing, Dave, is two things. Is that I was still intimidated to train in Gold's during the day, because it was like a zoo, right?
Yeah.
And so I would prefer anyway to train in the morning, and at least I could get my workout in at Gold's. No one was really there. Charles was there. He'd be there, from day one. Can you imagine he's still there? He'd be there. He'd be the only one there when I was there.
Unbelievable.
So I'd be there, and then it would give me the freedom of taking the entire day and being able to work. So as much as I was around Gold's, in Gold's, I wasn't in there for the hoopla all day long. And in that day and age, it was a hoopla. It was just nuts. Like during the day, how busy the gym would be and who would be there. Everyone would be there. Everyone would be training. It'd be like saying today, well, we got Phil there, Dexter there, Rhoden there, Wolf there, Ramy's there, Rolly's there, Max Charles is there, It's not like that anymore, but they were all there training at the time.
Well, how did they treat you though? Did they accept you, or did they just kind of not even acknowledge you? I mean, how did that go?
I think people thought I think it might have been like an oddity, because there wasn't people helping other bodybuilders at that time, really. You know what I mean? It was just there wasn't people going to someone for contest prep advice, really. People were still doing it on their own. Right. I can tell you, I used to see every single day, morning, noon, and night. Who used to live there on the bench all day long, Dave?
Who?
All day long would sit on the front bench out front. I mean, all day, every day. I would see them all day, because I would go from back and forth from the front desk to my office. Romano, never ending. He was like, it was like he would be sitting next to Dan Duchene on the bench. I mean, for hours, every single day. They would just be talking trash to each other and crap and about people coming in. It was a pre-radio show. If you had recorded the stuff now, you'd probably be a multimillionaire, because that's all they would do. And Mike Menser, the three of them.
Now, Dan Duchene was the original steroid guru, obviously. Did you ever have conversations with him? Because obviously he was helping people get ready for shows, obviously more gear related, but I know he was doing diets for people as well. Did you guys ever confer on your theories or discuss anything with each other?
Well, not really, but I'll tell you this. Dan Duchene is from the neck. Dan Duchene grew up about 2 miles from where I grew up.
Which is weird, right?
It is very weird. And when I went out to California, when I was training in Maine, I was a teenager, and I looked really good as a teenager. And this guy who looked like a ferret came over to me, and he said, "Boy, what I could do with you." And I thought it was like a homosexual, gay. Come on. he scared the hell out of me with steroids. I must have been like 16. He said, I just remember him saying, like, you should be on this and that and that and this and this and this, and you'd gain like 40 pounds in 6 weeks. And it scared me. And I didn't know who he was. And the guy who I was working out with said, that's Dan Duchene. And I said, no internet. Who's Dan Duchene? He said, oh, he's like the chemist out in California. And I said, what's he doing here? He said, well, his mother still lives here, and he comes for the summers, and he comes and hangs out back in the day when I was a teenager, he used to come to Maine for at least a month.
Right.
And he'd train at the same gym as me.
That's
and
weird.
He'd hang out at the same beach where I would go, where I ended up moving to.
Oh my
I
God.
moved from California to Maine and moved onto the beach, the same beach that he would spend his summers at. How crazy is that?
Very weird. See, if you would have listened to him, you might be Mr. Olympia right now,
I just remember Dan like doing his experiments with girls, and like they would give him 8 weeks and they'd look like Johnny.
Chris,
I mean, he was just all out zany and crazy.
I think he experimented on all the people he worked with. He didn't really know what was going to happen.
He did. I stayed at his apartment for 3 days one summer, and he let me use his scooter, and I scooted around. It's like a little motorcycle without gears, and I scooted around Santa Monica and Venice for like 3 days, and maybe I was there 4 days. And he had the coolest apartment. You would love it, Dave.
Romano lived in the front, didn't he?
What's that?
I think Romano lived in the front part of the apartment, didn't he?
I think he may.
Yeah.
See, I was so unnosy. I'm like the most mind your own business person, especially at that point in my life. So, I didn't, even though I had like access to Dan Duchene, I'm just not the type to say like, spill the beans and tell me everything you know. Because I probably wouldn't even be able to, I wouldn't even know what to ask, really. You know what I mean? It'd be like going into the Oval Office with Trump. Trump. Oh my, what a shitty Freudian shit slip that is. It'd be like going into the Oval Office with Obama. I mean, what are you going to say to him? That's like when I was at the bodybuilding camp, even though I was with like Haney morning, noon, and night, and Gaspari, I never sat down and said, I'm coming to your room tonight and you're going to tell me everything you do. So I would just like put on my antennas and try to like, vacuum it up some other way. So when I was staying with Dan, I think you're right. I think Romano was staying downstairs. He might have been, him and his girlfriend. One of Romano's like, in those days, he had access to like 10,000 girlfriends because they'd all fly in and, to meet Dan Duchene, and there'd be Romano on the first floor, the front. But they lived near the beach. They had a great place. And, it was just a cool California vibe to his apartment.
Yeah. Chris, we all know most of us know that you were married before to the world-class bodybuilder Laura Craval. Where did you meet Laura? And when you first met her, did you know that she had championship potential?
No, I mean, I met her at the bodybuilding camp. She ended up actually staying the whole entire summer at the camp. She worked there for the summer. I think Zelon hired her, and it was David Zelon who saw her potential and extended the invitation to stay at the camp for the summer. And we met there, and had a professional relationship there at the camp, like I had with a lot of people. I have mostly professional relationships with people. You know what I mean? No matter who it is. They know me professionally, but they don't know me, obviously. And so over the course of like 12 weeks, we developed a relationship that was, not professional. In fact, we got fired at the end.
Did you really?
Yeah, we got fired at the end by Mark Mazurek. He fired us both. Even though they do camp, I sound like Trump. They did reviews of people who every week of these people. I was considered a quote camp counselor. Right. Because I wasn't a star, right? I wasn't a Lee Haney. Sure. So they would review like the star each week. People who paid to come to the camp would review the star. Lee Haney was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and why was he a 10? Why was he a 1? What's his strengths? What's his weaknesses? What would you like to see changed? And then they'd review the counselors. And I would have like 5-star Grammy award-winning reviews. And everyone else would have like 2 stars, 3 stars. A few people would have 4 if they were lucky. So, I mean, I had the 5-star reviews, and towards the end of the camp, one rich camp counselor gave Laura a Porsche.
Oh my God! What?
It's funny, right? And I think that pissed off Mazurek enough that he fired us. I'm dead serious. He fired us over nonsenseness, and now he promotes the LA Fit, show.
Yeah, that's so funny. So you got fired for being too good. Sounds like what happened to me at Muscular Development.
Someone gives you a Porsche. You know what I mean? I don't know.
How did you meet Jay Cutler? Where did that relationship start?
That's because Lou Zwick used to send people to me to do diets too, right? It's crazy how old I am, right? People know these names, right? Lou Zwick.
You should be 70 with all the things you've done in bodybuilding.
Who? You know who used to be Lou Zwick's right-hand man? Ron Harris.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he couldn't function without Ron Harris, just like Blackman can't function without him. No, Ron Harris is a workaholic, and Ron used to work for Zwick. And Zwick used to send people to me to do diets for. So Lou Zwick gives Jay my phone number. Jay calls me up, can you help me? I'm like, I'm too busy. So, I said, call me in like 2 weeks. And so 2 weeks go by, and, he calls me, and I'm like, too busy. I said, call me in a week. Because it was my weaselly way of saying, I don't want to help you because I'm just too busy, and, I just don't want to do it.
Right.
So he calls me again in a week, and of course I recognize the fact that, okay, 2 weeks went by, I said, call me. He called me to the T, the day, the hour. A week goes by, Jay. Johnny, Jay's wacky, insaneness. Another week goes by to the hour, the phone rings, it's Jay, can you help me? So I said, okay, I'm going to Worcester tomorrow. I'm actually going to see a Luther Vandross concert in Worcester, that's where Jay lives. And one of my California clients used to manage Luther Vandross. So I said, I'll meet you, somewhere in Worcester. I'm getting a hotel there for like 2-3 days. So I went down, met Jay. He was like 19 or 18. And we started working together. And we went to the gym, actually. And I showed him like basic stuff to do and what he should be, try to put together a framework for training and a framework for dieting. And I'm sure he's listening to the show. We went to meet at Arthur's Bagels the next day.
Remember that. You remember Arthur's Bagels, you remember.
Yeah, and that's probably where bagels came from. So, you can eat these too. So I put together a nutrition program for him, and he went on to, improve, right? So he's improving. He's improving a lot. And at some point, it just clicked with me because he'd come up to my house thereafter. And then, he'd come up, and I'd be like, wow, it looks really good. Wow, it looks really good. Wow, it looks really good. And then he'd come up at the wackiest hours and say, you're going to be around tomorrow when you look at me. This is way early on as a teenager. Yeah, Jay, what time do you want to come up? How's 7? I'm like, okay, he 7 a.m.? Yeah, 7 a.m. Okay, he lives 3 hours away, so that means he's going to leave at 4 a.m. to be up here at 7 a.m. So he could go off to work.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
He'd work all day long. I think he was like a caddy at that time. Seriously, a caddy. And so I remember being somewhere in New York City, and I saw Lou Zwick. And Lou Zwick was always looking for the next big thing. That was his whole thing, right? I don't know if you know Lou Zwick's modus operandi. He was always looking for the number one bodybuilder. And Dave, I remember saying, I know Jay has not won anything. I know Jay is nothing. I kind of been around the block. I'm telling you right now, I think he's going to be Mr. Olympia.
You did say that.
I would sign him to a contract, so all he needs to do is train and eat all day. Because if he could just train and eat all day, God, there's no limit to what he can do in a fast period of time. And I remember having that conversation. It was just like it would happen yesterday. And he was like, well, think about it. And I thought, this guy's been looking for, the next Arnold or the next guy to win Mr. Olympia, to manage him, to be his corner man, to promote him. And he passed. And,
wow.
And the funny thing is, Jay went on to do all those things.
Yeah. Yeah, and the guys he did wind up signing and working with probably, fizzled, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course.
Now, answer this question for me. You've seen a lot of bodybuilders in your office. You've worked with a lot of guys. Who would you say are the top 5 most impressive looking? They don't have to be the guys that place the best. The most impressive bodybuilders you've ever seen.
I would say, without a doubt, when Lou Ferrigno was making his comeback for the WBF, and you know what, you can ask Lou next time you talk to him. He was about, I think it was 336, which is Ramy's weight, but he was 336 at some point getting ready for that WBF show. He signed the contract with Vince McMahon, and he was in Gold's Venice. And Dave, I'm telling you, he looked like he was 19 feet tall, and you know, he had no distension. He had brutal, dense muscle. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And I had this eerie feeling, you know what, he had a lot of people around him like, this is what you got to do. That's what you got to do. You know, and I'm thinking, you know, he looks like he's 6 pounds over his competition. You know what I mean? He looks like he could come in at 330. And sure enough, I think whatever he didn't do the WBF show. He got smaller. Then he came back for the Olympia, which was a debacle for him. In this, not a debacle, but in the sense that really he could have come on stage at 330, 325, absolutely positive, and he would have won the Mr. Olympia. He could have won the Mr. Olympia at 40 for sure. So I would say that look, Lou Ferrigno, and an impressive look. Gary Strideman was 273. You can ask Gary too. He was 273 in
91.
No, let's see, 91 Olympia, 19. What year was the Olympia in Los Angeles?
It might have been right before he left for the WBF, maybe 1990 or 89.
1990, 273, and he weighed in at 225 for the Olympia. He was ready at 273. I'm not exaggerating. He dropped 50.
Oh my God.
So I saw him at 273 eating like a maniac. I mean maniac, like 6 potatoes and 3 chicken breasts at a meal. I'd never seen anything like that. And I couldn't even wrap my mind around how he would even think that he needs that amount of food. But he was 273 and he was insane. Samir on any day other than the Mr. Olympia from 6 weeks out on was one of the most impressive physiques ever. I mean, dazzling display of everything. Lines, symmetry, condition. But you know, it just, you know, in the gym, and it's not because he was a tank top bodybuilder, it just, you know, something would go haywire the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, he always had problems, yeah.
Jay, 2001, 2 or 3, those years, there was a density about him. I think you can, I'm sure you saw him in the magazine, Dave, right?
Yeah, sure.
Or you saw him in real life, you know what I mean? There's a density about him that people don't have these days. And you know, that was impressive. And probably, I mean, there's just tons of physiques, but, you know, certain looks that Eduardo Correa brought would, you know, 2010, 2009, 2014, conditioning-wise, just conditioning to look at is, you know, spectacular. Those are just personal memories that I have.
Right.
That doesn't mean that those are the 5 best bodies of all time or 5 best physiques, but me seeing in person, just like leaving them and thinking, wow, that's crazy looking.
Where does Big Ramy, now that you're working with him, where does he rank up there with impressive physiques that you've worked with?
Most, you know, potentially the freakiest of all. I mean, he's like a Jay 2.0. In other words, you know, honestly, when Jay will tell you, Jay was on just one tremendous roll for like 5 years, which means he was just getting bigger all the time and denser and bigger and denser and bigger and denser. You know, so it was like from 95 to 2003. That's an 8-year stint of just never-ending improvements. What I mean by that is like, there were times, you know, Dave, when you were competing and you could like eat a McDonald's meal and you say, God, I feel bigger.
Right.
Jay was like that every day, you know what I mean? And right now, Ramy's like that, you know, I mean, he's that type of body where he can eat on mass. You know what I mean? Most people eat food and they get fat and worse, or that, but there's some people who can eat a lot of food and they just get like bigger and denser.
In your experience, do you think that Ramy can be the best of all time? Does he have that kind of potential now that you've been working with him and you got a taste of him?
I don't know, because I don't know. I don't know, and because I don't know what's in him. You know what I mean? I still don't know what's in him.
Mindset.
What I mean by that is I just got off the phone this morning with Guy. I know what's in Guy. He's a nut. You know what I mean? So you don't know what's in a person until their body fat comes down, they're dragging, and their body fat comes down, and they're tired. And you know what? You have to have, at that point, the mental either capacity or mental incapacity. I mean, you've got to be retarded enough just to be able to say, I don't care. Right. I really don't care. You know what I mean? I don't care if I pass out on this treadmill, and I don't care if I'm doing squats on low carbs, if I blow out both knees and get hurt and, have to end my career now. You have to have that mentality to be the best. And I'm not going to know, so if the question is, can he be the best? You got to have the right mentality connected to it. And I'm not sure yet. Physically, things are going good, and he's big, and, you saw the picture yesterday. I didn't know he put that on Instagram. Yeah. But, that's 336 pounds.
Yeah, it got about 20,000 likes in about 2 seconds. Chris, let's move into a different direction. I forget what year it was, but you could tell us what year that was. Some people might not know this, but you were diagnosed with skin cancer, and it wasn't the safe type of skin cancer. It was the deadly type. You had to undergo some interferon treatments, which were probably the most brutal things you probably have had to go through. You can tell us about that in a little bit. But how did that change your outlook on life, and how did you get through that scare? Because you did disappear from the industry for a couple years while you were going through it.
Yeah, I just started feeling unhealthy. I felt very, very unhealthy in 2000. In fact, I went on this tour with Jay to he did a bunch of shows in Europe, and I can remember waking up in just drenched out of my mind on that tour every single day. And I was like, God, when I get through this tour, I'm going to go home and see a doctor, so I get through the tour, and I felt like I had the flu every single day, and even previous to that, the whole 6 months previous to that, something was wrong with me that physically that I couldn't put my finger on. And the reason I never went to a doctor is because, right, you've been training and eating good for 20 years or whatever it is, 10 years, 50, a long period of time. You think you're healthy. So when I got back, I went to a doctor, and they just did a zillion tests, and they couldn't find anything. They could find markers in my blood that were weird, and then not weird, then weird, then not weird. So I remember one doctor saying, I guess you're healthy, but it's something. I remember these words: something is brewing. It's not good when a doctor says something is brewing, right? Right. So I remember him saying that, and having the summer of 2000 was hell. It was just fever after fever, and I'd go back to the doctor, and they'd just back to tests and scans and nothing. So I went to they sent me eventually to a super specialist of infectious diseases. Maybe I had Zika or something, I was thinking, even though it wasn't around at the time. and this one doctor, she said, let me map your body. She said, it sounds like it could be melanoma. And she said, nope, not melanoma. Wow. So early 2000, and I think it was 2000, yeah. See, I'll connect it to an Olympia. That's how I remember. Early 2000, spring of 2000, early summer 2001, I'm bleeding on my like the side, like under my lat, you know, like on my near my ribs. I'm bleeding. I'm like, what is that? And I look and I see a mole that I know has been there because I have other moles even to this day here, and I had several others cut off, and it was like just oozing blood, and it was black, and I'm like, where did that come from? So I get in the car and I go to it's like 11 o'clock at night. I call up my doctor and I tell him what I see, and I go in to see the doctor, and they cut it off, and she comes out. She says it's not good news, and she said so human being. What do? I go right into denial. It's not good news. I'm like, put my shield on. What is it? She said, oh, it's she gave me like a fancy word for melanoma. She didn't use the cancer word.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, no big deal.
Yeah.
So I go home. She calls me the next day. She said, you got to go see this guy. So I go in to see this guy, Dave. I go in to see this guy, and he's a doctor, and he's going to do a surgery on me. People aren't even telling me the details of what's going on, you know?
Right.
So I'm like, I think he wants to talk to me about, like, who knows what, you know? Okay, we're going to give you some antibiotics or something, some special antibiotics.
Right.
And he tells me, well, you know, it's melanoma, looks terrible, you'll probably be dead, and you know what? I just got up and left. Goodbye. And so I call my doctor, and I scream at the top of my lungs at her, and I said, don't send me, you know, I can't. It's Ramadan. I'll break my fast if I use all the F words.
Right.
I said, don't send me to people who are going to be so negative. I said, I don't care if I only have 3 weeks left to live. I prefer someone to say, you know, you got a year. You know, just can you send me to someone optimistic? So she sends me to this other doctor, and he had just moved to Maine from Los Angeles. And you know, he moved to Maine for like quiet lifestyle, and he's pretty darn well famous on cancers. And he instilled in me, like right from the get-go, he said, you know what? Yeah, it's bad news, but we all die. So you know what? You got to go out and live that you got to take tomorrow and every day going forward, like you don't even have this thing, and go out and live life to the fullest, and together we'll beat it. All you need to do is come in and see me, and you know you're in the best hands that you can be in. And in my mind, I just turned a switch and said, okay. He told me, you know what, you know things will be fine. So I just kept on going in to see him, and things turned out great. You know,
there was
actually, Dave, when I was discharged, I don't know if you remember, I sent you a discharge photo.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? I sent it to you?
Mm-hmm.
Because we went into a little closet and they had a cupcake and with a little candle, and the nurse would know me for 10 years and the doctor know me for 10 years. This is 2011, 10 years after, because you have to be healthy for 10 years for them to say, no more cancer for this type of cancer. Otherwise, for 10 years, it can come back and, you know what I mean? It's such a brutal type of cancer that you're not out of the woods for 10 years. So they bring you to this little, they bring me to this little closet, and they give me like a little song, and they start crying, and I they say, you're being discharged. I thought, wait, discharged? You're discharged from the Army and Navy and that type of stuff. What am I being discharged from? I thought I'd have to go to them forever. They said, you know what, you got a clean bill of health. This is your 10th year anniversary. I didn't know, just 10 years went by quick.
Yeah.
And they were crying, not for my success. I didn't know that till after I left. They were crying because the nurse said, we don't have a lot of these little closet parties.
Unbelievable.
So everything worked out good, and
I got to stop you because you told me a story, and you're making roses out of this story because it was a brutal story. I mean, what you had to go through interferon treatment wise, but you told me a story. I think you were in a bathtub, and your current wife now was, I think, your girlfriend at the time, and you said she came in and you told her you wanted to break up with her because you didn't think you were gonna make it, and What did she say to you?
Well, we were married at the time.
Oh, you were?
And yeah, we were married, and I didn't want to like burden. What a horrible way, right? You get married and then hi, what a burden. And I didn't want that as a burden, and the answer was, you know, to death do our what's the little saying, to death do us part,
Right.
or for better or worse. And look how shallow I guess I was, you know. A lot of people would just bolt, right? And you know, I told her that, you know, I believe that there's go on and do what you want to do, you know what I mean, without me, because even if I could die, or you could, quote, invest yourself in someone only to be let down because they are dead, or and she would have nothing of it. Her point was, I married you for the good, the bad, and the ugly, to death do us part, and for better or for worse. And I'm sure that words mean something, and actions do too, or actions with words are better than just words alone. But I think that also, was a source of comfort, where I was okay. I was always okay with dying anyway. I was always okay with dying, because I realize, and a lot of people who are cancer patients, Dave, they're not okay with dying. The waiting room at the cancer hospital is the worst room to be in, because it's people who are dying with their loved ones, and everyone's in a miserable mood. And I can honestly say that, my perspective was that I had no contribution and no decision-making ability into when I would be born, where I would be born, who my parents were, if I was born in India or Bangladesh or Timbuktu or Maine or New York City. So I thought it was arrogant to think, oh, I should have lived till I was 90. You know what I mean? Or I should have lived till I was 60. I mean, why? You had no decision. You have nothing to do. You have no control on when you were born. How audacious is it to think that you would know when you would die? So that type of mindset put me at ease that, you know what, if I die, I die. And if there's, because at some point we're all going to die anyway.
Well, luckily for all of us, you didn't die, and I got you. Probably till you're 90. So it turned out well. But obviously your wife was a huge force in getting you through that whole escapade of the interferon and overcoming the disease, because she stuck by your side.
Yeah, she's stuck by my side, and she's always stuck by my side, and she's the without a question the greatest person I've ever met. I did make roses of it, Dave, and when you get stage 3 melanoma, you have to go through a process called interferon therapy. And it's supposed to strengthen your immune system. And do you know when you're little and you get horrible flu-like symptoms, you just feel like you're going to die, and you run to like your father or your mother and you say, I'm sick, and every part of your body aches from head to toe, and you run a fever, and you have to go in bed. And that's how I felt for a year. I did interferon therapy for a year, and it was just pure brutality. And it screws up the way you think, and you can't think straight, and you have fevers all day long. have nightmares, and one of the oddest nightmares I had, I remember that to this day, is getting up in the middle of the night, and I was drenched with the interferon, and I went to the bathroom, and I was, when you get up in the middle of the night, you just have to go to the bathroom, you just run and take a piss, and I was like, oh, relief, and I was thinking, oh, what a nightmare, man. I was thinking to myself, and I was awake, this crazy dream. I had cancer, and I went, and I was going to die, and I was going to the doctor, and this is when I'm conscious. And then I realized, like a minute into thinking it, I was thinking, oh, wait a minute. That's how wacky interferon makes you. I am awake, and I am, I didn't dream it. I'm actually living it. But interferon makes you just absolute nutso.
I felt like that, Chris, when I tore my quad in India. As I was picking myself up off the stairs, after my quad tore, I said, oh, this must be a dream. I'm going to wake up pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I did.
Exactly. Well, I felt like that for a year. That's how much pain I was in, And even after that, it wears on you. The doctor always told me, he said, this stuff doesn't wear off. Like, oh, year of therapy is up. He said, it'll last 1 or 2 years in you. A full year after, I still was, like, not right mentally and extremely weak from the interference. So I didn't know it was, I was weak from the interferon, I was weak from the cancer, I was weak from, I was getting it from all sides.
But you beat it, and that's really was the outcome. I mean, I always believe that bodybuilders do better when they do get cancer because we have so much muscle mass and we're so used to enduring pain, and I think that we have a better capacity to do that. Not that we want it, but that we can endure it better. So maybe all the bodybuilding prior to that was to overcome the cancer. Who knows? Only God knows that. Now, Chris, I'm going to play a game with you. It's going to be called ping pong. I'm going to throw some names out there, and you're going to give me your initial gut reaction to them. It doesn't have to be a long explanation, a sentence or two. Okay?
Okay.
Here we go. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Dreamer.
Joe Weider.
Visionary.
Bob Kennedy.
Copycat.
John Balick.
Who?
John Balick, Iron Man.
Artist. Right? Artist.
Steve Bleckman.
Power.
Jay Cutler.
Success.
Ronnie Coleman.
Freak.
Dorian Yates.
Not so.
Lee Haney.
Class.
Victor Richards.
Mutant.
Lou Ferrigno.
Lou Ferrigno. The Hulk.
That's what I would have said, yeah. Cedric McMillan.
Oh God. What was the sign for? What was Prince's? What was Prince's? Cedric needs a sign. What was Prince's name after he changed his name?
The artist formerly known as Prince, right?
Okay. Didn't he have a sign or something?
I don't know.
It was.
Is Cedric the artist formerly?
Multifaceted.
All right. And finally, Big Ramy.
An enigma.
There you go. And on that enigma, that's going to take us to the end of another episode. Chris, I want to thank you so much for taking time and opening up your life. I know you're a very private person, and you really opened everything up. And I think people have a much better appreciation as to who you are and where you came from.
Well, we all have our own little stories. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody's life's filled with challenges and difficulties and triumphs, and that's what makes everybody unique.
It certainly does. And on that unique note, I'm going to say we are at the end of another episode of Live With, brought to you by Quest Nutrition. Visit questnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.